Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today, our special guest is Kimberly Gabriel. Kimberly is a Glenview resident and District 35 Glencoe Middle School teacher. She wrote and published young adult novel, Every Stolen Breath. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me, Yvonne.
Kimberly, what inspired you to write this book?
It started for me back in about 2011 or 2012. I was living in the city at the time, the city of Chicago, and there were a series of flash mob attacks that hit the city in areas near where I lived. Those particular attacks involved about a group of 20 or so teens that would blend in with the crowd, and they would give one another a signal via social media or their cell phones, and they would converge on one person and mob them. And those particular attacks terrified me. I was really scared by them. And it's not like Chicago didn't have any other crime, but for whatever reason, those elicited so much fear in me. I thought it might make a great premise for a young adult novel.
Wow, and you were pregnant at the time, so did you feel more vulnerable, this idea that you couldn't stop them, that kind of helplessness?
Absolutely. I had
Yes.
just had one child. I had a 1-year-old child. I was pregnant with my second son, and every time my husband left the house, I was worried that he was going to get attacked, which was irrational,
Right?
but powerful.
Yes, I understand that. Oh my gosh, I understand that. That time of a woman's life, I have been there too. So, and this is your first book. You were able to publish with a big recognized publisher. So tell us about that journey.
I was pretty lucky. I published with HarperCollins. It took a while for me to find an agent. I think I started querying in about 2016, and I had some agents that were interested, but nobody offered representation. And so I I signed up and tried to get into a contest called Pitch Wars. Pitch Wars is a contest where one veteran author will mentor somebody trying to break into the industry for about 2 months' time. And then your manuscript goes on a showcase in front of many agents. And I got chosen to participate. Dawn Hughes, who's a great author, chose my manuscript to mentor. And she really helped take my writing to that next level.
What, yeah, what a great thing to have a mentor, right? And you just have to look for them. Is that how it worked?
It's a contest called
Yes.
Pitch Wars.
Yes.
You can find it on pitchwars.org. I'm actually a mentor this year, and I now have a mentee because I think that this is such a wonderful program to help people get started.
Wow. Boy, that must feel familiar as a teacher. And then you now have a protege.
Absolutely. It's very similar, yes, and very enjoyable as well.
Oh, that's a very good resource. We definitely will have this on the screen. So Every Stolen Breath is a Junior Library Guild gold standard selection and the winner of International Literacy Association Children's and Young Adult Book Award in Young Adult Fiction. Now tell us how your book received awards.
Oh, well, a lot of that was HarperCollins that had arranged that. I'm sure that they put me up for the awards. I just knew that I won them, which was really exciting. I think I found out about the Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection by Googling my book shortly before it came out. And I realized that I got it. And my editor found out shortly after that. And then the International Literacy Association, my publisher, emailed me just a few months ago and told me that I had won that award. And I was very grateful and very honored. Those two especially, those organizations are so tied into literacy. And of course, I teach 7th grade literacy, so it had a special meaning.
That must be such a dream for a first-time author, that the publisher just pushed you to the right contest or push you right there and your book gets that kind of acknowledgement.
Yeah, very much.
And now you can look up your book at libraries, or it's definitely one of those must purchases for a young adult section, isn't it?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the setting in the book involves some very iconic buildings in downtown Chicago. Is this where you imagined some of the terrifying attacks, or was it because you live there and you just know how they will be next to each other?
Well, ironically, I had moved out of the city when I started writing this book. And so I started this as a way to um, kind of entertain my nostalgia for the city. I
Ah,
say that's ironically because I do some pretty mean things to the city. You know, I tear up the waterfront and sell off some of the property there. And there are some pretty bad things that happen in places that I love in the city. But part of the joy in me writing about Chicago was that I got to write about these places that I missed. So I missed Navy Pier and I missed the library. And I missed some of the streets that I mentioned in there. So it was a fun way that I could still revisit them in my head as I was writing.
that sounds like a very good literary tradition. It is said that T.S. Eliot wrote Wasteland, that whole arid, dry landscape in the middle of winter. He missed the warmth and he imagined it all in the winter. So I saw on your website that you don't have any events in 2020, but have you had to pivot your book marketing tour to adjust to the COVID changes, or did the publisher, they arrange all that for you?
Yeah, so I started, my book came out in 2019 in November. I was lucky that it got published before COVID hit. And I had a great opening. I had several events, and then all of a sudden COVID hit and it put an end to that. I had quite a few things scheduled in 2020 that I was really looking forward to. And of course, you know, the conventions got shut down, and I was in a few panels that we're going to be in different places cross country. Some of them went virtual, so that was fun and that was kind of exciting that we could still connect online. But then at the same time, you know, my teaching job ramped up. I had to pivot and suddenly teach remotely, and so my focus and shift in my life also. I just had different priorities during that time.
Yes, it must be hard to teach at home with your kids at home too.
Yeah, you know, I think it's been hard for everybody this year in many different ways.
So do you have any videos, or did you post these online events on your Facebook, or did you do any of that, or did you do it yourself, or was it someone else who helped you with doing that?
The two conferences that turned to online conferences, I believe, were Murder and Mayhem, which was run by Dana Kay in the city, and she did a phenomenal job of taking everything within a weekend and making it available online. And so she recorded it and she put it, made it available on her website. And then the other big event that I was a part of was the Ohio Anna Festival, and they had that panel that I was on made available online as well.
I see. So you wrote poetry as a fourth grader. Now, have you always been writing?
Yeah, I think I've always been drawn to writing. I've always really enjoyed writing. You know, when I went to college, I didn't necessarily think that I was going to make a living off of writing, but I definitely had the goal that I wanted to write a book and I wanted to get it published. And I'm a very goal-oriented person. So once I set that goal for myself, I decided that I would work at it until I was able to accomplish it.
Oh, very good. That steadfastness, right? That's what we need. Perseverance.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of perseverance.
So, what is your next project? Do you already have something in mind?
Yeah, I've been working on something now. It is a paranormal thriller. I can't say too much what it's about because I'm about to turn it into my agent. However, I will say that most of this book was written during, you know, the stay-at-home orders and during COVID, and so It initially started out with some darker tones, and I found myself all throughout the months of March and all summer of last year needing to have a little bit more hope in my life. And so there is a stronger love story in this particular book, and there's a strong message of hope because I was just being reflected. It was very reflective of what I needed to write and experience and feel during that time.
And this is also a young adult novel?
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yes.
I'll always write young adult. You know, I
That
teach
is,
seventh
yeah.
grade, and I'm very drawn to it, so it just seems to fit well.
I think you're an expert of that age group because you're a seventh grade teacher.
I think I'm immersed in the world, and so you know,
Yes,
it kind of fits. It brings a little synergy to all the different parts of my life.
yes. And it's a good outlet, right?
Yes, very much.
Some of my writer friends and I've kept in touch with some of our previous guests, and they also said this quarantine has been good for them. Once you're a writer, you treasure the time you can sit at home with no interruptions.
Yeah, you know, that is very true. I think that uh, being a teacher and being a mom of three young kids who have also had to learn remotely, you know, that's kind of been my primary focus. So that part has been really difficult,
Yes,
and it's been hard to squeeze in the writing time, to be honest, because everybody's home.
yes,
And waking up early in the morning to make sure that I still get that time because it's important for me to do so.
yeah. It's not, yes, like you say, it's not true for everyone that they could be on their that have that alone time. It's a bit of a luxury for people like you and me who are moms and yes, but it's good to keep that in focus, keep that goal in sight, that you make that time for yourself. And the paranormal genre, do you find that you have to do some research, or do you think that that's a much more talked about genre now than, let's say, 10, 20 years ago?
You know, there's been several paranormal books that have been getting picked up lately in the young adult field, and I'm excited about that. You know, the last time we were really into paranormal was during the whole Twilight saga, and then there became a lot of books about vampires, and so you know, publishers
Yes.
kind of strayed away from paranormal, and now we're seeing it back in different forms of paranormal. So it's been kind of fun. I would say having paranormal elements allow me to be a little bit more creative. I
Mhm.
have some world building that I've been able to do with this particular book. And so it's just been a different type of writing that I've enjoyed.
I think you're right about people got tired of the vampires. And then actually in the 90s, you got the Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So, so maybe there's got to be other, right, other elements of paranormal. My son watches the Supernatural series, and I'm so surprised that it's been, what, 15 seasons of that show. So,
Yeah, it's a great show. You know, there have been some great books with werewolves. There is some more vampire books that are coming out in 2021 that I'm really excited about. And so, yeah, it's nice that everything is cyclical in the publishing industry.
so you mentioned your agent. So is this the same agent that you had before, or did you have to find another one?
No, I love my agent. My agent is Jenny Herrera. She's in New York City, and you know, shortly after that Pitch Wars contest I was mentioning earlier, she picked me up out of the slush, and we have a great relationship. I really enjoy working with her, and so she's the one who, of course, subbed me to HarperCollins for my last book, and I'm looking forward to going out and sub again with this next one.
Oh, that sounds great. That sounds really nice that you can actually have a agent that is a friend too. So who do you think of who as your audience? Who do you think of as your audience, and who do you plan to inspire with your book when you work with teens all the time?
Yeah, you know, my students have always been my target audience, and maybe a little bit older because I write YA. Seventh grade, I feel like,
Yes.
goes between middle grade and young adult, but some of those students are ready for young adult. I would say that in the classroom, I started to notice that kids really wanted thrillers and they really wanted page turners and they wanted books with a lot of tension. And so when I set out to write Every Stolen Breath, that was one thing that I was doing. I was writing my book that I thought kids in my classroom would be excited to read. I wanted to reach every reader in my classroom. I wasn't really thinking about inspiring anybody. I was looking to entertain. And then I think the more that I got into the character of Leah and the more that I started to admire Leah for her strength, for being a character who pushes past asthma and anxiety, things that she considers perceived weaknesses. I
Mhm.
started to hope that maybe that would reach a few students and people could start to realize that they are stronger than they think they are many times.
Yes, yes, isn't that true? Then do you think about, well, because you're a teacher, so you are bound by the school schedule, but do you think about visiting other schools, maybe on, one of those special days off that's not the same for each district, that you could visit some schools in Glenview, I mean, your own hometown, so to speak?
Yeah, that would be wonderful. That would be so much fun. I love Glenview. My first school visit that I did when my book first came out was here in Glencoe. I did a school visit as an author to the students, which was fun. And then I did another school visit to my hometown school where I grew up, and that was another special one. But we didn't really have a lot of time to expand. I think my book was out for about 3 months before, the stay-at-home orders kicked in.
That's true, that's true. So what do you like about Glenview?
Oh, I love Glenview. My husband and I moved here right from the city, and we thought that we would be the people who would really miss Chicago. And while we do, we found this wonderful community in Glenview. We love that there are so many parks, and there are pools, and there's this cute little downtown area, and there's the Glen, and there are so many times we can ride our bike to the dairy bar or the library and hang out as a family. I feel like it's a very family oriented place with really great people and a strong sense of community, and we love that.
I agree because when we moved to Glenview, my children were 4 and 5, so we really enjoy these parks, and we went out looking for them, in during the summer, and it's been a really wonderful place to bring up our children.
I have two boys and a girl, and they're at the age where they still want to try all sports. So I've had my boys in football and baseball. My daughter has been in baseball and soccer. Both of my boys have done a little bit of soccer and basketball as well. And so we've gotten into some great programs from the Park District. They've done a really nice job setting up programs that kind of offers a little of everything.
No, I agree. There's so many choices here. My kids have enjoyed all sorts of sports as well.
I would say even during all of this, Glenview's been a wonderful place to explore just our family. They've had a lot of opportunities for us to get out and still enjoy the outdoors.
That we're lucky that way. And I love our library. And even with this closure, the library has offered some activities for the students to do as volunteers now. So I think this has been very nice.
Yeah, I love the library. We still visit regularly, or we still at least visit the pickup window regularly. Glenview Library is where I used to do so much of my writing. So I look forward to a day when I can get back there and spend hours in one of its comfy chairs, just writing or revising.
Oh, that's definitely true for me too. Yes, the library was like my office. I could go
Yeah,
anytime.
same. Mhm.
So, and you mentioned you have an agent, but how about a publicist or a PR agent? Do you have someone like that?
I did when my book first came out. I had an in-house publicist through HarperCollins, and she was wonderful and phenomenal, and I adored her and was so appreciative for all of her help. And then I also had another publicist that I worked with outside of HarperCollins, and she did a great job too. She was somebody who was local in Chicago, and we just felt that because this was a Chicago book, it would be nice to have somebody that was local and from the area, and I loved working with her as well.
You mentioned a second PR agent, but this person you found yourself?
Yeah, her name is Dana Kay. She has a great business in the city, and she was somebody that some of my writer friends had used, and they said wonderful things about her, and I learned a lot from her as I was going through the process of putting my book out into the world.
So what do you recommend to our viewers who are writers? Do you have a special message for them?
Yeah, I think if you want to write a book or you want to publish a book, to keep your goals in mind and work hard to achieve them. If you're a writer, do a lot of writing, but also do a lot of reading too. Every book that I pick up now, every young adult book that I read, I almost read it like a craft book. I study it. I look at the way that the author works on the character arc and the plot and builds tension. And it is constantly strengthening my own writing. So I think the more you write and the more you read, the better you're preparing yourself for whatever will come your way. And it's all a sense of work, constantly trying to get better and improve your own craft. I think we all are. I think every writer is. I hope that my next book is better than my last book. And if I write a third book, I hope that one's better than my second.
Well, that's really important to emphasize the craft. A craft is something that you work and rework. So I like that kind of message for our viewers. Now, as an English teacher, do you also, let's say, are you very intentional with using vocabulary that you want your students to be able to attain, or are you critical when you read other young adult books, novels that you think they should use a higher vocabulary?
Oh no, I think you have to listen to a character's voice, and so the vocabulary has to be applicable to the character. If you have a character who is very casual with their tone, then they might not use really sophisticated language or big words. So I think that I immerse myself in characters. I hope my readers immerse themselves in characters, and I think as long as the vocabulary is authentic, then the author did a really great job.
Oh, that's a very good point, to develop a character based on the voice you hear in a natural, organic manner instead of putting the vocabulary out there. But Kimberly, it sounds like your publisher had every area covered. So tell us about your cover, which is very, very attractive.
Well, thank you so much. I happen to love it as well. My cover was designed by HarperCollins. They hired somebody to do it. And I had given some input saying I really would love to see the city somehow featured on the cover. And I didn't want to see anybody's faces. And so when they presented me with this, I was so pleased and excited because I think they did such a nice job with it.
And something about it also is very appealing as a young adult look to it.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Kimberly, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a nice time talking with you.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.